Next, from the state capitol, the Senate Executive Committee hears testimony on House Bill 1, the bill that would legalize the use of medical marijuana. This bill has already passed the House. In this committee, we'll first hear from supporters of the bill, and then from a doctor who's a specialist in fighting addictions who is opposed to legalizing medical marijuana. This runs about 50 minutes.
Rich? I didn't hear that. I'm glad I didn't.
Okay, I'll conclude on this. I know other people are going to have some questions. First of all, I appreciate what you're trying to do and for whom you're trying to do it. I accept the premise that this can provide relief for people. I've got to be honest, though, the doing those heroin seminars and seeing kids get in trouble and starting down a road that they thought wasn't a dangerous road and finding themselves dead a very short time later was a pretty eye-opening thing to me. And whereas I might have been somebody who would have been a little more open to this beforehand, that experience has really kind of made me rethink this. And I just think this is the type of thing that when its time comes, it ought to be like every other controlled substance, that it's from the FDA on down and it's coordinated in its production. I mean, we don't really control for how much THC is in here. THC is 6 times as strong today as it was 30 years ago. I just think we need to consider the unintended consequences of this because this isn't just about making sick people comfortable, although I know that's your intention and I know there could be some merit to that. There is a potential downside to this, and it's big and it's scary, and I think it needs to be thoroughly vetted, and I'm not sure we're there yet.
Senator Murphy, I think we are there, but I've shared your concerns. That's why at every turn we've tightened this bill, and I personally,
and I do recognize that you've done that. And I appreciate that.
And I personally, I was elected state's attorney 4 times, and I've been on drug raids. I've seen the decimated, dysfunctional households caused by illegal drugs, decimated people, and most of the meth bills I've sponsored because of that personal experience. But marijuana is not meth, it's not heroin, it's not opium, and it certainly should be controlled, and it should be for adults. It should be for a limited purpose, similar to the devastation I've seen with OxyContin, Vicodin. There was an article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch 2 weeks ago about the tremendous blight on the street of OxyContin that's taken by grandchildren from grandparents' medicine cabinets, sold on the street, and lives are blighted by this. We live in a culture which has to stop it.
And I appreciate that.
All
I'm saying is there are medical professionals, addiction professionals, who say when you water this down and you allow for this, you increase people who start step 1, which means you increase the number of people who end up in deep trouble. And when they're telling us that, I'm just saying I think we've got to hear what they're saying, and I'm not sure this does.
I understand.
Other questions for the sponsor before we hear from other witnesses? Senator Link?
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up on something that Senator Murphy said. For a number of years, I served on a what's called NACASA, which is Northern Illinois Council Against Alcohol and Substance Abuse. And you're right, Senator Murphy, there's a lot of these situations that are devastating what we face today in drug abuse, in alcoholic abuse, and we would like to conquer it. There's no doubt about it. But then also I have another story of a personal matter. I live with a person, my wife, who has MS, and I've become very familiar with the devastation that MS arrives from. And I've seen people that my wife has been affiliated with that deteriorated into such pain and agony that it's a crippling type of disease that could happen. And I got to tell you, if something like medical marijuana can alleviate that pain from those types of people, and I also want to commend the sponsors of this bill for tightening up the regulations and tightening up the security to make sure that there's a limited amount of people that can obtain this, but also, you know, when you see the agony of some people under drug abuse, you got to look at these people that are suffering, that are people that did not want to have the consequences of things like MS in their life, but yet, if we can help them in any sort or any form to make sure that their lives are better and the pain is less, I think this is the right step forward, and I just want to commend everything that the sponsors have done on this.
Senator Radogno.
Thank you, and I also appreciate the efforts you've made to tighten this up. First of all, I do want to share Senator Murphy's concern about setting up an alternate method to approve and distribute a particular drug. And I guess the question I have from a policy perspective that concerns me is, how do we make sure that this is the only drug we do that for, instead of policy-wise really setting up now a legislative approval process, and then there's the FDA approval process. So what would happen if, say, LSD, which many people think does also have therapeutic value for certain mental illnesses, why don't they come to the General Assembly and get that approved? Do you share that concern of this alternate approval process by people who really are not terribly knowledgeable on the, the scientific method of doing that?
I appreciate that, and Minority Leader, but this is unique because it is a plant, and so it's got to be grown, cultivated. That's one reason for the tight structure, and it should be only for adults. I frankly, other than Timothy Leary, I've never heard anyone say LSD is any good.
Oh, there's
There are?
definitely stuff.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
Again, I don't know, but the LSD is a chemical substance, is one.
But that's really not the point. The point is the approval process, regardless of the origin. I mean, some medicines come from mold, some come from
Sure.
plant materials.
I
That
see.
doesn't really matter. It's the policy question of setting up an alternative, regulation and distribution system that could apply in the future.
It could, I suppose, but that has to be done with, again, us
Right.
doing it, and it's got to be done based upon reasonable medical evidence. It's got to be done with popular support. LSD has a track record. Again, I haven't studied it, to be honest with you, but the reason that this system is set up, frankly, is because the feds have never wanted to move, other than in the program that Ronald Reagan signed into law, a very limited program for the use of marijuana for medicinal purposes. This was established in '82, and for a very select few people. I've never heard of a similar program done for LSD, but marijuana, at least by that program, by the feds, that seems to give approval to what we're doing, in the sense that we are not in the FDA business. We are allowing use under strict controls based upon a limited purpose. And all we're doing is taking that little foundation set by the United States government itself and expanding it pursuant to the authority given to us in the Constitution by the 10th Amendment.
Okay. Well, I still think we're setting up an alternative use that is a precedent that I'm certainly concerned about. But beyond that, can we talk a little bit about what this will cost to set up the system that's described, the dispensaries, the oversight, how many agencies will be involved, and what is the projected cost of that?
John, it'll be the Department of Agriculture, State Police, Department of Public Health, and the cost will, Department of Professional Regulation, the cost will be estimated by them, and the fees that are established by rule will be set to pay for the cost. That's in the bill. That's why the fees aren't set. We share your view. We don't know what the full cost is, but the state shouldn't subsidize anything.
Okay, so what is your confidence level? I mean, since in a situation, say like just a FOID card, it takes the state almost a year to get those out, that they're going to be able to fulfill this function in a timely way, given that we're so stretched right now with
That's
program
an
demands?
excellent question, and I don't know the answer. This is a 4-year pilot program. It'll arguably take up to a year to set it up. And within that time, we'll know how, and I wish I had an answer. The FOID card system is a disgrace, in my opinion.
Okay. Well, I guess, finally, I have more of a comment than a question, and that is, I mean, I just think we're kidding ourselves here, and we're asking the wrong question. I mean, there is a lot of popular support for the compassionate use of marijuana. I think there's also a lot of support for the recreational use of marijuana. To the extent that we allow alcohol, there's some similarity there. I mean, I really think the question we ought to be asking is whether we should legalize it. And that way we can have the discussion that Senator Murphy was talking about. What, is it a gateway drug? Is it not a gateway drug? What's the revenue potential? I mean, you talked about it supporting this. Maybe we could tax it. What would the impact be on gangs and crime? I mean, I really think those are all questions that need to be considered, even in the context of the medical marijuana, because I absolutely believe, based on other states' experience, even though this is drafted tightly, the amount of money that is to be made here and the distribution, it will get out on the streets. That has definitely been the experience in other states. In fact, a lot of the criminal marijuana here is medical marijuana from other states. I know we want to try to avoid it. I'm not confident that we'll be successful in doing that. So, I mean, I am not for this because I don't think it addresses the bigger picture that we really ought to be addressing, and that is whether or not it would be wise to legalize it.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hunter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Haynes, I have so many questions. I'm really disturbed by having this bill. I know that so many people are depending upon this bill who are ill, and they think that their answer is smoking marijuana to help relieve the pain, but it's still a drug. I know that public opinion is driving this whole issue, but it's not science, because you all have not looked at the science. If you looked at the science will tell you that marijuana, as you indicated to yourself and admitted, alcohol and marijuana, it didn't, when we passed alcohol during Prohibition, it didn't solve the problem. We're still addressing the alcoholism problem today.
Yes, ma'am.
The huge budget, the huge amount of dollars that we're spending to deal with alcoholism, the huge amount of dollars that this country has spent and is still spending to treat drugs, and now you're talking about legalizing marijuana.
No, ma'am, I'm not.
That's what you're doing. That's what this really is.
I respectfully do not agree.
I disagree with you. It's legalizing marijuana as a medicine. That's what you're doing, is as a medicine.
Well, I'm contending that based upon history, the limited use of it can be a good to relieve pain. OxyContin is highly addictive, and it's prescribed every day. It's abused every day. It kills people every day. Vicodin. And we face that as a society. And we've taken steps to create a system, which Minority Leader pointed out accurately, which is a controlled system. The federal government has set up, as I pointed out, under Ronald Reagan, a system with a limited use of marijuana. There's some basis for this. I'm not just pulling this out of the sky. There have been people who cannot take OxyContin and Vicodin. They cannot ingest it, and they suffer tremendous pain. This substance relieves the pain. It doesn't legalize it. I don't want to legalize it. I would never dream of legalizing it. When I was state's attorney, we prosecuted drug laws. And I was elected 4 times. I think the people approved of that.
Yes, yes, but there is a conflict right now between the federal government. The FDA has their own opinion as well as the Controlled Substance Act. They have their opinion as well. In terms of relieving the pain, it's the THC, which is a chemical inside of the marijuana that will relieve the pain.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know.
And these are patients which are under a doctor's care.
I understand it doesn't matter. You know what, this country has lost the battle. We've lost the fight. We've lost the war on drugs.
That may be true,
You know,
but
and we've
I'm
spent-
not fighting that
we-
war with this.
All you're doing is impacting the problem more, because if you read your legislation, there is no way that you can control persons who live inside of the household
Ma'am, if
from
this
not
thing-
utilizing the drugs.
Senator,
Law enforcement are having huge problems already with people growing marijuana illegally. They're already saying with their budget cuts and shortage of staff, they cannot control this issue. I've worked in the alcohol and drug field since the 80s. You know, and the reason why I got in the field is because the federal government recognized back in the 70s, as you indicated, during the Nixon war on drugs, that they better start training some people in this country to address the issue because of the drugs that were coming into this country from the Golden Triangle as a result of the Vietnam War.
I understand that, and I'm saying to you that this is a structure where it's
It's not work, Senator. I'm
well,
sorry. It's not
Senator,
going to work.
Senator, I'm not advocating anything other than tight control of a substance
not gonna work.
grown in Illinois.
I commend you.
The system now is that a person who's suffering, and I think we all have anecdotal stories. I have some of
Well.
people who are suffering, and the doctor says, you know what can help you is marijuana. And these are people that are law-abiding. Where do they get it? They have to go into the dark side and get it from somebody who buys it from a Mexican drug cartel.
Senator,
or
I
a
commend
Colombian
you.
cartel.
I commend you, Senator, for putting this bill forth. I know you're trying to help people who are sick, and I understand that. I've had so many constituents and relatives and some of my good friends ask me, where do I stand on this issue? And I've had the same conversations with them as well over the years.
I would ask
know.
you a favor, Senator Hunter. I would ask you to consider that the American College of Physicians has endorsed this.
Nope, I can't
And I
do
would
that.
ask you to consider that this is a 4-year pilot program, and at any stage, something that is indicated amiss, I will tell you, I have a 4-year term, I will blow it up myself.
I know you
If you
said the
vote for
same
the bill,
thing.
I'll blow it up myself.
when you
Senator, I
brought
don't-
this
I
bill
don't-
forth, and, you know, I've been in the alcohol and drug treatment and prevention field since '82, and I took an oath of office that I would do the most I can to help people who are addicted. And this bill contradicts the oath that I took, and I have so much respect for you, Senator, but I'm sorry, I am unable to support you on this bill regardless of what you and your proponents has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think she's going to vote for you, Senator. Senator Raoul, and then perhaps we'll hear from a real live witness.
And I, clearly I'm not going to change Senator Hunter's vote. But I think Senator Hayne has done a terrific job with this. We all have, as Senator Hayne has indicated, our anecdotal stories that we can refer to. And it takes watching somebody suffer. I was appointed on the year anniversary of my father's death. He was a physician. He died of cancer. The Vicodin he didn't want to take. The morphine made him feel awful. There were not alternatives. There just simply were not alternatives. And to think, my dad is pretty old-fashioned. Had medical marijuana been available and offered, he probably would have said no, but on a small chance that he would have said yes to make those final days a little less painful. I think it would be worth it. And then, we talk about the addiction, the potential addictive qualities of marijuana. Well, there are so many pharmaceuticals that are approved by the FDA that have similar or more impactful addictive qualities to it, Vicodin being amongst them, and other pain drugs, and to pretend that if they have FDA approval that they're not quite as damaging, or they don't get out on the streets and aren't sold illegally. That's a lie, and so and why are we going a different pathway with this? As Senator Hayne explained, it's a plant, and it's in a different box than how you control a bottle of pills, and or a shot, and so I walk to the back thinking that I better walk away so I don't say anything, thinking, but I thank you, Senator Hayne, for presenting this bill. I know Senator Calderton, President Calderton has presented in the past, and I thank you for tightening it up. But I just urge people to just think about, you may have had that personal experience of somebody suffering and there's just no answer, and the docs try to prescribe whatever they can, and there's no answer. I apologize for that delay, Mr. Chair.
No apology necessary, Senator. Thank you. I know we do want to hear from witnesses. Senator Ryder indicated he had just a couple of questions for the sponsor. Senator Ryder. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Hayne, if this becomes law, then one of the concerns that has been raised to me regards workers' compensation insurance policies and the prospect of medical marijuana being classified as a medicine under which a workers' compensation policy, insurance policy would cover. Tell me your reaction to that.
I would not be for that.
You would not be for,
Would not
you
be
would
for
not
that.
be for medical marijuana being a medicine required to be covered by
Yes,
a
sir.
workers' compensation.
I would be opposed to that.
Okay. In a similar, not identical vein, what about as far as a mandated coverage under an insurance
Absolutely
policy
opposed.
or Medicaid?
Absolutely opposed.
Okay. Okay, you don't think that any of those steps would be,
No, sir.
You'd
I
be
would
opposed to
oppose
this?
every one of them.
okay.
Hopefully,
Okay.
the President of the Senate would assign any such effort to my insurance committee.
Okay. Hopefully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Hayne, why don't we make sure that we have a witness? Do you have multiple witnesses that you want to testify, or just
Just this one, Mr.
wonderful? Please.
Two. Is that okay with the committee?
We would like to pass the bill, so perhaps the less testimony, the better.
So we want you to testify.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Champion, and I'm a service-connected disabled veteran. I've had multiple sclerosis for 25 years now, and I suffer from very painful and severe tremors, atrophy, and distortions of my body, where my fingers curl up, my wrists bend back. It feels like someone's trying to break them. And it almost makes me feel like I'm a prisoner in my own body, because sometimes these the tremors are god-awful. And in the 25 years I've had this awful disease, I've tried everything. I got it young, and I was always willing for the doctors to try new drugs on me and everything. At one time, my doctors had me up to a cocktail of 59 pills a day. I felt like I was in a coma, falling asleep in the middle of conversations. After I began cannabis, and I still only smoke one cannabis cigarette a day or take a couple of cookies, I have not increased. All this 8 and 9, I would die. I couldn't smoke that much. I would never, you know. I couldn't afford that. But anyways, after cannabis, I have been able to not only reduce my pills down to 24 pills a day, which is much lower. I have eliminated such pills as Valium, Xanax, which was prescribed for tremors, morphine, which was prescribed on top of the methadone I take for breakthrough pain, gabapentin, and many other pills I have been able to eliminate from the drugs that I currently take. As I mentioned, I am on methadone, which I do want to get off of, because twice in my life I have almost overdosed on methadone, and it was not my fault. I was taking it as prescribed, but I was sick. My body was dehydrated, and it's time-release capsules, and somehow it got built up, and then it was a massive release in my body that it almost killed me. Both times I ended up in the emergency room out of it. It's just another example of how dangerous prescription pills are. I take them only as prescribed, and in fact I take less than prescribed to me, and it just shows you how dangerous that they can be. The pill side effects of all these drugs, especially when you start lumping one on top of another, and I've taken oxycodone and methadone and at the same time, as well as the other drugs. It just absolutely, you cannot function. You cannot function as a human being. Cannabis is my gateway off of these heavy drugs. I can't think of a better way to describe it. It's not my gateway to the heavy drugs. I can get them all for free because I'm a disabled veteran. I'm not in this for the high or the buzz. I'm in this to relieve the pain. Cannabis stops my tremors. It shuts down my nerves, so there is no pain. I know I don't have the atrophy. I don't have bear claws when I start getting those, a couple drags or a cookie or something like that. It relieves the pain. It shuts down the nerves, and they no longer attack me. Finally, I would just like to say that I have one of the 33 diseases that you have to have to be eligible. Many of the diseases are far worse than mine. I've visited with a lot of people in nursing homes and many other patients. Many are far worse off than I am. It's a highly exclusive club, but one you do not want to be a member of. Thank you, everybody, for your time and for listening to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Champion.
We have one more witness, Mr. President. Is that okay because of the time? Dr. Walters? Thank you so much.
We have a handful of opponents wishing to testify. If you are coordinating, if you could assemble your panel of one or two witnesses while the last proponent is speaking.
Punch the... It's on. Never mind. It's on.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished committee members, my name is David Walters. I've been a practicing OB/GYN in Mount Vernon for 18 years. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer. Average life expectancy for this diagnosis is 11 to 13 months. I've undergone extensive chemotherapy and radiation for palliation of symptoms and in an attempt to extend my life. In the course of my career as a physician, I've had access to a broad range of controlled substances with which to treat my patients. Now, as a patient, I've actually sampled a wide range of medications for an equally wide range of symptoms, including pain, nausea, vomiting, poor appetite, anxiety, insomnia, depression, diarrhea, and so on. Specifically, since my diagnosis, I've been prescribed narcotic medications including fentanyl, morphine, hydrocodone, and oxycodone. I've been given benzodiazepines including Halcion and Valium, and I've been prescribed the amphetamine Ritalin and the barbiturate Seconal. It's my opinion that each of these medications has a greater abuse potential than marijuana. Each probably results in a greater degree of physical and mental impairment. Each has the potential to impair one's ability to operate machinery or drive a vehicle. Each also carries a much higher tendency to develop dependency and addiction. Furthermore, each of these medications has a more dangerous and unpleasant side effect profile, including the not infrequent occurrence of fatal overdose. Yet each may be and are legally prescribed, dispensed, and consumed routinely so in the case of terminally ill patients. Many doctors and patients have found that the use of medical marijuana in these often desperate cases results in significant reductions in the use of other controlled substances. House Bill 1 provides a relatively innocuous addition to this potent armamentarium of medications and is viewed by many physicians and patients to be a gentler alternative to provide relief for a variety of symptoms including pain, nausea, poor appetite, and anxiety. House Bill 1 is quite conservative by comparison to similar legislation which already exists in 18 other states. It provides safeguards by limiting patient access through a single primary care provider, thus preventing doctor shopping. Notably, none of the other medicines I've mentioned enjoy similar protection against this kind of abuse. It also restricts use of medical marijuana to a well-defined list of diagnoses, and it limits the number and location of both manufacturers and dispensaries to facilitate law enforcement. As previously mentioned, the individual patients who comprise the future club of medical marijuana users are in general a desperately ill crowd. You don't want to join this club, but I hope that you will have the compassion to make this intervention available to those who need it. At present, they're forced to either forego access to this substance or become marginalized with their relationship to the law. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Doctor. Our thoughts and perspective. Questions
Thank
before
you.
we hear from the opponents?
I wanted to add, especially for Senator Murphy, since the doctor has testified, I forgot to bring the man's letter. I'll have it, hopefully, if I can get this to the Senate floor. There's a professor of oncology, I think, at Washington U in St. Louis who has recommended marijuana for use of his patients. Unfortunately, but I'll get it to you.
Thank you. Why don't we hear from opponents?
I'm Dr. Dora Dixie. I'm a licensed surgeon and physician in the state of Illinois in good standing. I'm board certified in family medicine and addiction medicine. In the field of medicine, I wear two hats. One as a primary care physician for the Cook County Bureau of Health, where I take care of the medically indigent on the south side of Chicago. I also am an addiction medicine expert, where at the Women's Treatment Center, I serve as the medical director. I am the immediate past regional director for the American Society of Addiction Medicine. I am the past president of the Illinois Society of Addiction Medicine. And under both hats, I oppose the legalization of medical marijuana, and I put medical in parentheses and abbreviations and underscore it. As a primary care physician, science should drive the practice of medicine and not legislators. Medicine is not smoked. There are three phases that were spoken about earlier that a medicine or a pharmaceutical goes through, a three-phase process to become a medicine. And I hope that you all senators have a copy of Andrea Barthwell's testimony. It is maybe 10, 11 pages, and it is exhaustive. And my position is the same as her position. The first phase is a test for adverse effects. And I have not heard anyone that is supporting this bill say anything about the potential adverse effects. Nothing is all good. So what are the side effects? What is the downside of this? The phase 2 is a test for effectiveness in patients who have the disease or condition for which it is prescribed for. What is the effectiveness? How is that measured? I don't know, and I haven't been told. Phase 3 is there is a determination of the drug's safety, effectiveness, and the dosage. And for me as a primary care physician, whenever I prescribe a medication, I want to know what are the drug interactions. What can I put with methadone? What can I not put with, with marijuana? Should I increase the dose of one medicine, decrease the dose, start something, stop something for someone to take this marijuana on a regular basis or however it is supposed to be taken? What is the starting dose? Should I titrate up? Should I titrate down? Are there going to be some webinars to train me on how to prescribe marijuana? I don't know. Who will educate the doctors on prescribing this medical marijuana? And importantly, who will be the watchdogs over us physicians? Because we mess up. We need to be policed. Everyone needs to be supervised. Who is going to supervise this? I don't know. Will I have samples in my office? So here, try this for a week and see if it works. If it works, then you can come back and I'll give you a prescription or a recommendation to smoke this. I don't know. That hasn't been addressed, but those are important things that I would have to be answered before I could say yes. Is there any follow-up? Or do I just write the recommendation and let the person go home for a year and they come back in a year or 6 months and say, I liked it, I didn't like it. If they die under the influence of marijuana, what am I supposed to write on the death certificate? There are lots of questions that go unanswered for me as a physician. Marijuana is potent, it is harmful, it is unstable, and it is unpredictable. The American Society of Addiction Medicine says no. The oncologists say no. The ophthalmologist groups say no. And I say no. My second hat is I'm an addiction medicine specialist. I am an expert, considered an international expert in the field of addiction medicine. And you all may or may not know that addictions is the #3 killer of Americans, second only to lung cancer and heart disease. Marijuana is addicting. I can give you many stories. At the Women's Treatment Center, I detox about 1,000 women of various ages, the youngest 16 up to age 72, from various Sunday drugs, and many of them come in with just addiction to marijuana that they cannot stop. It is addicting. there is a high street value for even the pills that I prescribe. But when I wanted to prescribe Suboxone, I had to get training. I had to get a special DATA 2000 waiver to be able to prescribe this controlled substance. I don't hear any talk about this for this HB1. I take care of women that have DCFS involvement with them and their children. And oftentimes for these young women, marijuana is the only drug that they're in treatment for because they are ineffective parents to their young children. So are we going to make the whole DCFS impotent? Or do we have to have a few more sad cases of dead babies where we have taken the power away from the DCFS administrators, legislators, case workers to have any kind of juice for these women? Marijuana can precipitate psychosis. I admitted a young woman Monday. She was 22 years old. She had smoked marijuana. I had to send her to the emergency room by ambulance because she was paranoid, and we were all out to get her. And in closing, we used to be able to say that the devil made me do it, and soon we'll be able to say this medical marijuana made me do it. We are going down a dangerous path. We are not Jesus. He forsook the 99 to save that one. And if this bill is passed, we will forsake maybe 12 million people to save thousands. 12 million versus thousands. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
My name's Anthony Grotens. I'm currently the Chief of Police of Jacksonville, Illinois.
Welcome, Chief.
I've been employed there for 4 years. I'll give you a little bit of history. I'll try not to date myself too badly. Prior to being hired as the Chief of Police in Jacksonville, I spent 21 years with DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. And prior to that, I spent 11 years with the Adams County Sheriff's Department, so I am dating myself. But my experiences is I want to touch on that, and I want to tell you guys some of the concerns that we have as law enforcement. And of course, I'm here representing not only the Jacksonville Police Department, but the LA Chiefs of Police Association and the Sheriff's Association. The time I spent with DEA, I had the luxury of being able to travel all over the country. And I've been reassigned in and out of the Springfield office a number of times, but also to various places, including Alaska and South Texas, Washington, D.C., for example. Alaska had medical marijuana when I went up there. And the local police, along with the state troopers, would always confer to the federal government because it was still illegal federally. And they were always complaining about the problems that they were having with keeping the medical marijuana just with the medical patients that needed it. And it was being highly abused throughout the state as a result. So the controls over being able to monitor and make sure that the patients that have the drug are contained within that patient's ream most possible. And I think the potential for abuse, especially when we're talking about 2.5 ounces every 14 days, which does equate to about 180 marijuana cigarettes. And if they're smoking up to 8 or 9 marijuana cigarettes a day, that gets into a whole nother problem that we're really concerned about, and that is the operation of a motor vehicle, okay? There's no definitive test to tell somebody what amount of THC they have in their system. Either you're going to test positive for THC or you're going to test negative. The problem is marijuana metastasizes to the fat cells of the body and can remain within the system up to 30 days. So if you smoke marijuana today, 30 days from now, you could still test positive for marijuana. That doesn't mean you're impaired. Our concern is the impaired driver. And since we won't be able to use urinalysis or blood test for impaired driving, we can only use the field sobriety test, which is not recognized for marijuana. It's only recognized for alcohol. I think we'll be dead in the water trying to enforce this for DUI. And I share that concern with my other law enforcement constituents. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a gateway drug. What I will tell you, I don't know if it's a gateway drug or not, but what I will tell you, in the thousands of arrest and search warrants that we've conducted, not only here in the state of Illinois, but elsewhere in the country, for either heroin, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, we routinely found marijuana. Does it go hand in hand? I don't know, but we find it, and we're still finding it. And you know, you guys did a wonderful job back in the 90s when we had all the problems with the influx of methamphetamine, and you created legislation to help the police. Help the police now. We don't need any more impaired drivers, whether they're smoking marijuana or drinking, but if you're smoking 8 joints of marijuana, do you really need to be operating a motor vehicle in this state? My suggestion was before that if we're going to go ahead and pass medical marijuana, then have the person that has a prescription relinquish their driving privileges in the state of Illinois for the period of the prescription. That way we know he's not going to be operating a motor vehicle, or at least operating it legally, and it gives us some tools to be able to maybe curb the abuse.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Senator Sullivan was here earlier and wanted to make sure that law enforcement had a chance to clearly state, there are 2 objections, 2 primary objections that law enforcement has to the bill: driving while impaired and...
Well, driving while impaired, but the amount of marijuana for the prescription, 2.5 ounces, it leads way for a tremendous amount of abuse. A patient smoking 8 joints a day, he shouldn't be driving anyway, but who's going to smoke 8 marijuana cigarettes a day? This young man testified earlier he could only smoke 1 a day. I'm not disagreeing, but what I'm saying is it leaves, if you have 2.5 ounces of marijuana, what's to say a person won't smoke just 1 of those and sell the other one? And we see that happening a lot. I mean, you know, we do have a problem in this state with drug trafficking, and marijuana is part of the problem. And we certainly don't want to add to that problem. We want to try to curtail that problem.
Senator Sullivan was also interested in possible remedies. I'm just curious, if the bill were amended to provide for relinquishing the driver's license and to reduce the amount, would law enforcement be supportive of the bill?
I don't think so, sir. And this is the other reason why. It is still a Schedule I drug with the federal government. That Schedule I means that it has no medical purpose whatsoever. And as long as it remains a Schedule I drug, we would have to take the position that it's illegal federally. It should be illegal in the state.
Thank you. Senator Hayne, do you have a comment on the field sobriety issue? Or?
Well, can I just have a time for rebuttal for
Sure,
both
absolutely,
witnesses?
please.
I appreciate the chief coming, and have I got this thing? These things are so frustrating. I appreciate the doctor and the chief here. As to the doctor's testimony, she did talk about many of her patients are drug abusers. This bill is designed for patients, not drug addicts. Patients. And it's replete with check and balance to assure that this is a patient-driven, controlled application of marijuana in plant form. And it's restricted to that. And I appreciate the chief's comment about scenes of drug abuse. I've seen them too as state's attorney. Quite often you find not only marijuana, but prescription drugs scattered throughout the apartment. OxyContin, I can name them all. So no one's proposing they should be removed and made illegal because there's abuse. This bill, once again, has created wall after wall around the narrow use of this for people in pain. It's been found, I'm going to get, and I apologize not having the physician, the professor at Washington University who prescribes it. There are many doctors who prescribe it. And there are 250 doctors signed a letter to the members of the Senate for the bill. And I pointed out the Illinois College of Physicians is for it. The advanced practice nurses and the nurses are for it. People in healthcare, because they've seen it work. not for drug addicts, but for people suffering, as this gentleman here and many of us know. Now, as to the DUI issue, the current law is any trace of marijuana, and as the chief accurately pointed out, one doesn't have to be impaired. It's in your system for a month. You can use marijuana, be stopped, and there's a warrant to take a blood test. Doesn't make any difference if you're not impaired, you're guilty of DUI. What we have done with this bill is to say that the person who has a certificate to use this medically must submit to a field sobriety test if there's a probable cause stop, or even could be a Terry stop, any stop. They have to submit to a field sobriety test. And these field sobriety tests, I disagree strongly with the chief, they are approved by NHTSA. NHTSA has said, because these are multi-attentive tests, if you can't stand, you can't do this, you obviously can't drive. They indicate the inability to perform multiple tasks, such as driving, moving the steering wheel. If someone, and that is going to be admissible in this case.
Sorry, I think some of your yes votes are thinking about becoming no votes if we go on much longer here, so.
Okay,
You did a fine job. You did a wonderful rebuttal. There being no further discussion, the roll is open. Madam Clerk, please conclude the roll.
Senator Severson? Yes. Senator Ryder? No. Senator Luchtefeld? No. Senator Murphy? No. Senator Rodeno? No. Senator Raoul? Yes. Senator Staines? Yes. Senator Munoz? Senator Link?
Yes.
Senator Lightford? Senator Hunter? No. President Cullerton? Yes. Senator Claiborne? Yes. Mr. Chairman?
Aye. On that question, there are 10 voting aye, 5 voting no, and to be so reported.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
And members of the committee, Mr. President.